good afternoon. I have to make sure I've got that right. It's good afternoon to you. Hope you're all well. Hope the sun is shining where you are today, because it's certainly not in my part of the world. It's very gloomy. So hopefully we can brighten things up with this session that we're holding today. It's another 2 to 3 days webinar, which we are recording, just FYI, where we've invited Laurie Macpherson to talk to us today about, I suppose, tips and tactics around how to negotiate with an employer. So you're clearly here to get a few things answered. Hopefully Laurie can do that for you in this session. There'll also be an opportunity to ask questions. You can do that in the chat box as we go along. I'm very happy to monitor that. And of course, you may also, put your hand up and come off mute and ask Laurie as we go along. So without further ado, I will hand over to Laurie, and she can tell you a little bit about herself, and then we can get into the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Venmin. So welcome everyone. It's lovely to have you. Please excuse if I'm a little bit snuffly today. I've actually got COVID, but I'm feeling okay, and I wanted to honour my commitment. It's really important to me. So today we're going to talk all things negotiation. So I'm going to dive into the slides. As part of that, I'll tell you a little bit more about me, but mostly this is for you to, let me just put that on full screen, to think about good ways and tips and tricks for negotiating with an employer. So first things first, this is what we're going to talk about today. Really important is preparing for the negotiation conversation. It's something that it's well worth taking a bit of time around and getting yourself ready, getting yourself into the best place. It's not something to do on the hop or on the hoof or grab someone on the way past. It works really, really well when they know that this is a serious conversation and that you want to have a discussion about your future, about your development, about your salary, your flexibility, whatever it is that you want to negotiate with your employer. So we'll talk first of all about the prep, then we'll cover how to gather evidence. And don't worry if you're not sure what that means, I'll explain as we go how to gather your evidence for your employer. And then how to make your ask win-win, because I'm seeing an awful lot of people at the moment saying, I need this and I want that. And it's a tough job market out there, especially in the UK. So right now, how can you make sure that what you're asking your employer is something that's, reasonable, that they're going to likely agree with? And how can we make that possible? Again, to set that up for them, thinking about always, what's in it for you? Absolutely. Always, what's in it for them? So it's really important that we have that in mind as well. So a little bit about me, my role, my business is all about helping smart women just like you to find the role that you love at the salary that you deserve. And I talk about this on LinkedIn, on Facebook and on Instagram. So if you would like to connect, that would be lovely. My background was retail and the travel industry, where there was absolutely no flexibility at all. We worked till very late at night and, every day, and Christmas and all of those things. And it was only on coming back to the UK and changing out of retail that I got a bit more flex myself. And then for the last 5 years, coming up in March, I've been running the business of career coaching and mentoring women to get the jobs that they love. And sometimes those conversations include how they negotiate for their salary or how they negotiate for their flex as well. So I do this all day, every day, speaking to lots of great women, hearing all their stories. And I know that this is something that's really important right now. Lots of people don't necessarily want to move in what is, is a difficult job market. But if you do want to stay where you are, how do you make sure that that's working as best as it can for you? So that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about today. So what I would love you to do before I go any further is just to tell me in the chat. I'll just stop for a second so I can see faces and comments. Tell me in the chat, what might you want to negotiate? Is it flex? Is it money? Is it both? Or are you just preparing just in case you decide to have this conversation? It'd be great to get a bit of a feel for where everybody is at. I'll just give it a wee minute while you pop some answers in the chat. Just preparing for the conversation. Great. Requirements to attend the office. Yeah. Really common at the minute. Ruth, got a message just to me saying a bit of both: salary flex, development opportunity, parents and tactics, flexible conditions. Yeah. So return to office is happening at the moment. There's lots of chat about it. I saw this week in on LinkedIn. Some companies are asking people back into the office more and more, and it's how we ensure again that it's win-win for the employer. If we're not going into the office, we don't particularly want to go back to the office in a lot of cases for lots of reasons, which can include family and childcare, but it can also include, just actually. Well, someone like me, I work really well from home. I get my work done. I get up in the morning. I'm at my desk for 9. I don't leave it till after 6. I don't need people around me. I very occasionally choose to co-work for a bit of chat, to have a bit of lunch with people, often being completely honest, so that we can have a wee wine after it. But in a general day-to-day basis, I get my work done absolutely fine here. Thanks very much. And lots of people feel exactly the same. Plus, there's the cost and the the commute is now dead time, isn't it? I had to commute yesterday to speak at an event, which was lovely. It's dead time. I added 4 hours onto my day, which is absolutely fine once every so often. Don't really want to be doing that on a weekly basis. Hannah's doing a degree out of work, so how to get back, how to have that conversation when you get back in. Yeah, absolutely, Hannah. Brilliant. Thank you for that, folks. It gives me a really good idea of what it is that you are looking for or potentially looking for from these conversations. So let's go back to the slides. I'm going to just make these full screen, but let me get into the one I want. So let's start to think about how we prep. So the first thing to think about is, what do you want and need? What is it that you are asking for? And be really, really clear on that. And I'm going to be really honest here. As women, we are socialized from birth to be nice, to be kind, to be compliant, to do things for others, and to put our own needs absolutely at the bottom of the pile. So I'm going to surface that. It does feel odd asking for what we want and need. And you may have to steel yourself to do this, especially if you're not used to it, especially if it's likely to shock or surprise your boss that you are the person having this conversation. If you're known for being someone who just gets on with it, who does all the extra things, who helps everyone out, if your surname, like mine was when I worked in our office, if your surname is will do it, Muriel will do it, Ruth will do it, Rachel will handle that. And then suddenly you're asking for something, oofed. It's a big step. So know that you need to be really sure of what it is that you want and need. You need to know your walk away, and you need to know what's important to you. So is it cash? And again, we're taught from birth, it's not nice to talk about money. It's common, all of these things, that are floating around in our mind. It's actually okay. We don't get any prizes for not asking. And nobody I've ever worked with has had an employer come and tap them on the shoulder. Know this and say, you're absolutely smashing at what you do. I'm going to give you more money. You're going to have to ask for it. So be aware that this is the first tip, the first rule of Fight Club is know what you want and need and be ready to ask for it. So is it a certain amount of money? And again, there's ways we can look at how reasonable and how likely that is. But is it development opportunities? Is it, I would like to sit with X for 1 day a week? It's actually easier if we can be specific. We think we're being nice and kind and doing them a favour by being a little bit fluffy. And what women sometimes do is, I'd like X amount of money, but if you can't give me that, it's okay. It's not okay. You get to decide what's your walkaway, and you get to decide if you're going to stay or go. So what do you want and need? And be crystal clear in this. If they cannot give you money, what would be acceptable to you at this time? Would it be more flex? Would it be, could I do, the day at home every second week? What would be your ideal? And what would be your acceptable to you? It's really, really useful to get that into your head so that you have a bit of room for negotiation. And we'll talk about the how of how you negotiate as we go. But what's most important to you right now? Be ready to ask for it. And as I say, know that that's going to feel weird and strange, and that's okay. What do you want and need? And if they can't give you that, what's another alternative? So could they give you more holiday days? Could they give you, a 9-day fortnight? Could they give you compressed hours? What are the other options? It's worth doing a little bit of research on what those are, and they're different for everyone. And sometimes employers will say, and this is nonsense, but sometimes they say it anyway, we have to give the same to everyone. They don't. Because here's a really surprising thing. Not everyone wants the same thing. And often it's not that employers don't want to help, it's that they don't want to get it wrong. So can you make it as easy as possible for them to give you what you want? There's lots of organisations out there, like 2to3days, for example, who can support your employer, who you can say, here's a link to, some work that 2to3days have done on how flexible working could work for you. Can they bring someone in? Not everybody wants to work from home. Lots of folk love being in the office for reasons. So they don't actually need to give everybody the same. And it's helping to educate them a little bit on that. It's continuing to have those conversations. We need to be the same for everyone. Actually, I would suggest that you don't, because not everyone will want the same thing. So how's about we look at doing it slightly differently? So start from what you want and need. Second thing to say is ask for a specific conversation. This is not something to be done on the hoof. I'll tell you the story. I have a really good friend who had a desire to ask for more money, and he was absolutely right a few years ago. And what he said to me was, he called me up one morning, he said, can you talk me through something? My boss is in today. I'm in the office and I was trying to grab him on the way to the bank. Now, the boss ran a travel company during COVID. My first thought was, he's going to the bank to ask for yet another loan, probably. And you're grabbing him on the way by saying, can we have a chat about my salary? No. What you want to be doing is asking for a conversation, either, in your appraisal time, if that's coming up soon, or PDR, or whatever your company call it, or ask for a specific conversation. Can we have a chat about my development going forward? If they laugh, they won't. Or, say, oh no, absolutely not. There's no more money in the pot. We're far too busy. You kind of have your answer, don't you? You kind of know that your development, your progression is not that important to them. And that gives you the answers that you need. What you do with that information is totally up to you. You do have an answer of sorts if they say absolutely not. Usually they will say, yes, we can absolutely have a conversation, get it booked in, make sure it's, watertight, they're not going to book something over it, and have it in a private space. The next thing to think about, and we're going to talk much more about this, is have your evidence ready. Be ready to tell them why you need or want what you need or want, and why they should give that to you. And the last one, and this sounds a bit silly, but actually, if you are not confident in saying the numbers, if you're asking for £75,000, there's a big difference between saying, so with that in mind, I would like, and it's a little bit like Dragon's Den, I'm asking for £75,000, a 10% increase, and I would like that to be backdated from X. If you're not confident saying the words, do practice it. Record it, listen to yourself, keep saying the words till it becomes okay. It has to be safe for you to say it in your mind. And I know that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but sometimes if we can't ask, or it all sounds a little bit nervous, we're on the back foot. You want to go in there with a front foot energy. Imagine you're in Dragon's Den, asking them for whatever it is that you want and need. So I'm asking for another 4 days holidays to bring my holiday entitlement in line with what I've benchmarked for my seniority. So I'm asking for a new title so that I can share evidence of what I've been doing, so that when I am looking, to progress, I have the correct title for my level of seniority and to represent what I've been doing within the company. How are we feeling about all of this? I'm going to stop sharing there. Terrified? Terrified is fine. How do we feel? I'm going to give you a minute just to type in the chat. How do you feel about all of that? Anything anybody wants to add or ask at this point? And you're not alone. Absolutely practice the words yes. Scary. So it really helps with the confidence, saying the words out loud. Slightly nervous, yeah, Sasha, absolutely. No, this process will feel a little bit scary, especially if you're not someone who routinely asks. Top tip, start making small asks now, not necessarily in work. What can you ask for that starts to flex that muscle? Whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your family, whether it's with, I need an hour to myself on a Saturday, whether it's, I can absolutely do that, but it'll be next week. That's my favourite one. Absolutely. With a massive smile for sure. Absolutely. I'll get that over to you. It'll be middle of next week now. Oh, okay. Because we're establishing a little bit of a boundary. Good to understand how you value yourself. Yeah, Faye, I'm coming on to evidence next. I just wanted to get a sense of how you feel about the general process before we move. So yeah, my top tip is start with small asks and get used to it. Because getting rejected, in case you do, is something that's less scary the more you do it. I ask for things all the time. Lots of it's a no, some of it's a yes. So evidence then. This is your real hard, I have done this and I'll show you how. And here's what the result is. You will not remember it in 6 weeks, months, years' time. That we just can't. We're too busy doing the do. And that's really common in the women that I work with. They're doing the do, they're doing the work, their heads down, they're getting the work done. They won't remember what they're doing. So somebody just starting a new job next week messaged me this morning to say, I've got a new thing. It's good because it's not so good because of X and Y, but it's good because I've got budgetary responsibility and something else. Great. My message to her was, write that down, note that down straight away. Budgetary responsibility of X, so that you have hard facts ready to go. What have you achieved on this project? And evidence that works beautifully is not about cost of living, okay? And I'm saying this with love. Cost of living is not your employer's problem. This is not what we're going in for. If they want to give you a 2, 5, 10, whatever percent increase, lovely. This is not about that. If you're feeling it, they're feeling it 10 times worse because they've got a premises and hundreds of staff to deal with. This is not about cost of living. It's not about you saying and I've seen someone do this. It was awful to watch. My mortgage has gone up. My childcare has gone up. That's not what this is about. That's not, in the kindest possible way, their problem. Here's what you want to be talking about. While I've been working on this project, I've saved you £30,000 by doing a thing. I've improved productivity by 5% through doing a thing. My direct reports have increased from 3 to 10. What is your evidence of what you've done that has a value on it? I've saved you 2 days a month by creating new onboarding processes. What evidence have you got now? Right now, sitting looking at me, you will have none of this. You'll be going, what I hear every day is my job doesn't work like that, Laurie. I'm not a salesperson. Sometimes they even say like you to be a wee bit snide. And that's okay. It does, and it can, and you do there is a price on what you do. So a good tip is sexy action words like saved, increased, generated. If it's charity sector, you've generated revenue. You've saved time, you've saved money. These are the things that are important to employers. Remember, they're always thinking, what does this mean for me? The other thing to think about is salary benchmarking. Glassdoor is a good place to do it. Also, LinkedIn, if you look under the For Businesses tab, there's actually a salary insights pull down there. It's global, so it's not exactly bob on, but it's worth a little look. The other thing to do is simply Google your job title and look at jobs that are coming up in other companies. So executive PA and your area, what are they getting? Have a look at 5 to 10, you'll have an idea. Yes, not all jobs show the salary, massive frustration for another day. But if they do, this job is asking for this, and I actually give you more by doing this. So specific, tangible, measurable results. is what really, really works. Natasha, I see your question. I'm going to come to it at the end if I may, just so that I can keep a bit of a flow going right now. So specific results, that what you've done is great for salary. If it's flex that we're talking about, this is slightly more difficult, but what can you show them? Again, we'll talk about this when it comes to win-win. What can you give them back to get what you want? If I can come into the office one less day a week, I can do X, Y, Z. I'll be able to start work at, and don't promise something that's going to run you into the ground and give you burnout. I'll be able to start earlier, which means I can answer the emails from the clients in the other part of the world first. What can you promise or offer that will make it win-win? You want to give them some evidence of what you've done on this project. Now, this bit's hard, right? So I'm not going to pretend it isn't. You will have to go away and think, what did we achieve? What have we done? What have we changed? What have we made better? Is it process improvement? Is it increased revenue? Is it bringing more people into the business? Is it saving time? Is it saving money? These are the things that are always missing from women's CVs, and other things that move the needle. So tangible, measurable, specific achievements are the things that work to get you what you need. So in terms of the how, a really good tip is to give your evidence. My direct reports have gone, in my friend's case, his direct reports had gone from something ridiculous like 3 to 21. His boss hadn't, he'd known there was an increase, but he hadn't sat and worked that out. So the best technique in sales is to stop talking. What we tend to do is over talk. But I mean, it's completely fine. You know, it's fine. I really enjoy working with all these new people, and it's been great. And no, my direct reports have increased from 3 to 21. Silent. They'll be going, oh, God, I didn't realise there was as much as that. Oh, God, that is quite a big jump. Oh, God. No wonder you seem a bit stressed. Okay. Their brain will have to kick in before yours does. And then make a clear ask. Having increased revenue by £30,000 this quarter, I'm asking for £5,000 back. I'm asking for £5,000 addition to my salary, backdated from X. I'm asking for an extra day a week at home so that I can. What matters to them? Make a clear ask. So, to get what we need, thinking win-win. How will this benefit them? So one of the best things, if it's training or development opportunity, often they'll do this anyway. If you can put me through my qualification, I can absolutely sign something that says I'll stay for X amount of time or I'll pay it back. That's really common, really normal. I've had to do this myself before. If you sign up for this course and you leave within 3 months, you'll pay the full cost, some of the cost, less of the cost. That's really common. Get them to get it bound in for you. That's fine. You know, how is this going to benefit them? If I can work more flexibly, if I can work from home, you know, I've got a friend who's an accountant. She's on the double screens with the big spreadsheet in a noisy office with people talking all the time. It just doesn't work for her. So she's negotiated an extra day at home. I really appreciate the team and value time speaking to my direct reports. It's really important to me to support and motivate them. However, when I am doing detailed work on bigger picture strategy and on the numbers to ensure that they're correct for audit and for submission, I need an extra day at home so that I can focus on the numbers. If you can give me this, I will be able to make sure that everything is accurate and ready to submit. I can't do that in a busy office when everyone is talking round about me. Seems really reasonable. It's all about win-win. So how can you make it that you can offer them something in return? And remember, some asks, and I'm going to say this, some asks are not reasonable. You know, if you're asking for something like, I want to work from home with my kids running around under my feet, they can't sanction that. They just can't. It's two separate jobs. We know that. You know, they always will want to know what's in it for them. If you can give me this, I'll be able to give you this back. That's what they need and want to hear. I can attend meetings during core hours, I can dial in, I can do whatever it is that you need to be able to do, but what's going to make it acceptable and helpful for them? And I think that's where a lot of folk go a little bit awry with this. It's just thinking, what's in it for me? Think about what could be in it for them. So I'm going to go to Natasha's question now, because that is a really good question. I just wanted to kind of go through the process, if you like, and that is more or less the process, if you like. You know, prepare for a specific conversation, ask for what you want and need, know what you want and need, give them your evidence, and think about win-win. So Natasha's asking, what if you have the same job as a peer, but the peer is on a higher salary? So Natasha, a couple of things that spring to mind here. You can't know, probably, if that peer has simply negotiated a higher salary. If they've gone in and done this process, if they've said, I've done this, this, and this, can I have more money? If that's the case, you know, fair play to them, really. They've done this work. What I would say is have a look at what you've done and your achievements and your impact so that you can do the same process. If you feel it's a matter of fairness, if you feel there's, you know, a gender pay gap or something like that, that is a different question. Sometimes that one can be a bit awkward, because how do you know about your peer? Have they told you? And is that going to get them into any trouble? So sometimes it's a case of, you know, benchmarking salaries. I know if you know because you're in HR, for example, that's completely different. I would love you to unmute if you can, or maybe tell me a little bit more about that in the chat so we can unpick it a little bit more, because that's a tricky one. Quite honestly, often it will simply be because they've asked, or they might have had to offer them more to get them in because the market was doing that at that time. The market a year ago was quite inflated. If they came in then, they've probably had to pay them more to get them. There's quite a lot of factors there. So I'll give you a wee minute to kind of either unmute or type some stuff in the chat around that. And then what I think I would like to do is just invite anyone else to either unmute or pop in the chat their questions as well. So see, we've kind of covered the process, but this one tends to be much more individual to each person. Okay, no problem, Natasha. Don't want to unmute. I get that. In an open office, you have transparency, so it shows a range. Yeah, and they've told you. So yeah, you know, is it if it's just that you think that's a bit unfair, that's know that they've probably just done this work. If you feel that you should be on the same, what evidence can you show of your achievements to take back to your employer and say, and you can say, you know, I know that such and such is on a higher banding than me. Even if you ask the question, what would I have to do to get to the same banding as them? That can be enough for them to think, oh, actually, you do it already. We should be paying you fairly. What do you think, Erin?
Yeah, I was just going to chip in to say that also sometimes salaries become out of line if somebody's been promoted within versus the point you were making, Laurie, somebody coming externally into the role, because often there won't be parity. Don't know if that's the situation, but either way, I think making the skills-based or achievements-based argument is going to be the very best tactic, because it you know, generally speaking, because it is unemotional and it's evidence, and that ultimately around productivity and you know, sort of value to a business, that is a very, yeah, I think that's where the focus will be. So
yeah, let's see what Karen has to add to that. Employer recruiters both at the same time gave us the minimum he thought he could get away with. Yeah, often, honestly, it's a case of asking, you know, and I know that it's a really scary process, but what can you show them and give them that tells them that you are worth more? As I say, a bit of benchmarking, lovely. Get an idea that you are, there is more. I've found these 10 jobs which all show this at this level, plus I've also got this. So for that reason, I would ask for a salary increase of £5,000, £10,000, whatever. And as I say, if they say no, when you have done all this work, you've given them clear evidence, you've given them, you've asked for a specific meeting, you've prepared, you've asked specifically for what you want, and they still say no, you have your answer about your next moves. Because what can happen is that people get what I've seen called a glimmer. The employer says, it's kind of, I call it this time next year, Rodney. This time next year, Rodney will give you this. And it can go on. I've had clients who've had it go on for up to 7-8 years. And it's all very vague with if you just show a bit more confidence, but there's no specific feedback that would look like, and again, you can ask for that. What would that actually look like? What would I have to do to show that I was confident? And get them to tell you specifics. It's speaking up in meetings, it's leading meetings, it's sending feedback, it's taking charge of certain things. What do they actually want? Because that kind of vague feedback, which is often aimed at women, that I need you to be more confident, or I need you to show more initiative. Great. What do you actually want? What does that look like? What do you want me to specifically do? And I know when I've been coaching people before, I'd like to step into my manager's role. Brilliant. So what do they do that you can ask to support on? Can it be go to a specific monthly meeting? Can I shadow? Can you let me take over? I've certainly done it for my managers in retail. Can I take over the weekly report, for example? Can I go on the conference call? Usually they're delighted to get rid of it, frankly. And they're also, delighted to sort of help support you. There may be a conversation at that point of, yes, you can absolutely help with all this. However, I'm not moving and there's nowhere else for you to go. So the answer would be to exit, but with all these skills and with a higher value in the market, if you like, because you now have all of this. So that's another thing to think about, is have a look at your next move. And I don't mean it necessarily has to be linear or a ladder. Have a look at what you might like to do next. Find some of those job descriptions. What do they have? What are they asking for that you don't have? And the best way to get it is always with your current employer on their, while they're paying you, what can you get from them? So if you need to get a specific thing, can you get it in your current role so that you can be promoted? And again, you can make it win-win. Now that we've got X amount of new members of the team, I can see that you're going to have to focus on training them. I would like to learn how to do this report in order that I can learn this for my own development and support you. Could you teach me how to do this? You will then leave able to do that for your next role, and you've released a little bit of the pressure on them. It's that win-win. Again, it's always thinking what could be in it for them as well as you.
And also, I think just one other small point is that if whatever it is you're requesting is declined initially, that doesn't mean not to try again. But I think you said this at the beginning, Laurie, but important to underline the importance of knowing where your boundaries are, because you will obviously ask for something that may not be likely at all, or to have a high percentage of success for the full ask. So know where you're prepared to negotiate with yourself and have those boundaries before you start the conversation. That will make for a smoother, more confident discussion as well, on whether that's flexible working or money. And the only other thought was about 360s in big organizations. That is something you can request. Obviously, it's difficult if you're in a small team. It's not really viable. But in a big organization, if you're declined and it's to do with salary, particularly, or promotion, asking for that 360 feedback is something you would be completely within your right to do. And that may help identify the areas your line manager or indeed head of division, etc., is not sort of seeing. So, it could be a good way to continue the conversation, but with, again, more evidence-based than emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ruth said that she lives 3 hours from head office, works half 8 till 3. She's negotiated visiting the office a maximum of quarterly, but it's turned out to be at least once a month. So Ruth, again, is that written into your contract, or was it just a verbal agreement? If it was verbal, I would strongly suggest you get it written in. And if someone tries to get you in more regularly, verbal. Yeah, I thought so. Unfortunately, that's usually the problem. Can you say, can you? So here's a few things you can try. See how you feel comfortableness wise about all of these. I won't be able to do that as I've already attended once this quarter, as per my agreement. I can't attend on this occasion as I've already attended. Would you be able to say things like this? Or would that cause many mayhem? Or the slightly more assumptive way is, I'll dial in for this one as I've already been in the office, and my agreement is that I don't have to attend more often. The other thing is, if they're insisting you come in, can you again make it a win-win? So, for example, now I'm assuming, and I'm sort of pretending your office is in somewhere that you really want to visit. You managed to do some that were face to face, but they got forced to face at the last minute. Yeah, again, I would dig your heels in and just say that won't be possible, as I've already, attended face to face. So I'll be dialing in. I'll be able to dial in. Or if your office is somewhere you wouldn't mind going and staying, can you negotiate? Yep, absolutely, I can do that. I'm already over my quota of face to face for the month. So if I was going to come, I would stay over. And I assume it would be okay for you to pay for that. I know this all feels really uncomfortable, Ruth. So, test your tolerance of how this feels. I'm assuming if my office was somewhere dead exciting like London, I might think, right, okay, yes, I'll absolutely go, but I'll stay over so I can make it suit me. But if it's somewhere you really don't want to go anyway, then potentially, I'll be dialing in for this one. And there's a difference between saying I can't, I won't, and I'll be doing. I was asked to attend a meeting. They pay for you to stay over at causes childcare. Yeah, so in that case, I won't be able to. I'm not able to do that on this occasion. I won't be able to. I can't do that. I had somebody a few weeks ago asked me to attend a meeting on a Saturday night. Absolutely not on your Nelly puff. I'm not getting paid for it. So I simply said it's on a Saturday, so I won't be attending. No, I can't, because I absolutely can. It's around the corner. I can go if I want to. I'm not. So I won't be attending. I won't be able to. And if you continually stick to that, two things will happen. They'll either think, ugh, we can't continue like this, or, which is okay if you don't want to work for a company that wants you working face to face 3 hours away anyway, or they'll start to see, oh, Ruth doesn't do that. She won't do that. She can't do that. I don't know how possibly they even paid for you to go private. So they don't sound like a bad employer. I think maybe you just need to train them a little bit. And sometimes it is just training them, and they'll be okay once you train them, And I'll tell you something funny, Ruth. I've got an employer who's went to phone me the other day at like 5:05, and he's like, "Oh, I can't believe I'm phoning you after hours. You'll be raging at me. You'll be cursing me. You'll be wanting to have a drink in your hand." And I was like, "Well, I actually already got one," and that's because I've, over time I've trained him to know that Laurie has very strict boundaries around her working hours. I only work certain hours, and that's it. So he actually joked about it, and then I said, "Oh, I'm off next week. I'm on holiday," and he said to the client, actually, "Oh, don't bother her next week. She'll be full of prosecco. She won't be able to answer you." And it was a joke, but also I have created that for myself by creating the boundary. I'm not able to do that. I won't be able to do that. I can't attend. That doesn't work for me. These kind of phrases, deeply uncomfortable. But if you want to stay, and it sounds like they want to keep you, if they're wanting to pay for your private hospital appointment, then I won't be able to attend that one. I'll dial in and keep repeating. It's repetition until they start to know that that's how you work and how things work for you. So we ultimately create what we, what they give us. If we continue to repeat, if we give in, that's when things get a bit pushy. It can get a bit stretched. So if you just keep saying no, awkward though it is, all your peers are attending. Yeah, no, I get that as well. So that, it is a tricky one. Is it more important on this occasion that you are there, or is it more important that you stick to your boundaries? And I can't make that decision for you. You would have to decide, which is it.
Can I just draw your attention just to a question around returning to the workplace with a new qualification, but not
Yes.
actually any work experience around that qualification is what I'm gathering from this comment, and how you would potentially negotiate. I assume we're talking negotiating a starting salary. Would that be correct? Yeah. So do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that very directly?
Yeah, brilliant, Hannah. So what I would say, and this is, you're probably not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because it's important for the employer. They will want you to have something to give them. Yes, you've got a new qualification, brilliant. Can you do anything, even the tiniest bit of local voluntary for a friend's tiny business, so that you do have some evidence to give them? If you don't, you don't. We can't get around that, but just know that you will be up against loads of folk who do have your qualification and some experience. So it doesn't have to be lengthy, it doesn't have to be massive, but you've got a new qualification. What can you do with it? Supposing it's running Zoom workshops between now and Christmas, and I don't know what your qualification is, or speaking to a friend who's got a tiny business, just so that you have got something, because usually, not always, experience trumps qualifications every time, just so that they can see, she's done this thing. So what is your qualification, if you don't mind sharing? If you do, it's completely fine. Just to give me a bit of a spark, an idea.
Sure. So I'm just in my last year now of a psychology degree. And prior to that, I was in the private sector business world. I worked predominantly in sales in the fashion industry for over 10 years and beauty before that. So I've got a fairly long spanning career at sort of middle management level. Had my daughter. My job was not going to work for me being a mother. We also relocated from London back to Edinburgh, and it was the right time for me to go and requalify, because unfortunately there is no fashion industry in Edinburgh that I could go to. And this was pre-COVID, so no hybrid working or anything like that either. So my aim, my hope, is to go back into a coaching or learning and development role, so trying to mix my business experience and my psychology qualification together. Exactly how that's, what my first route into market's going to be, I'm still trying to work that out along with my research questions. So I've got a rough idea, a less than rough, but not completely honed idea. So, I feel I will have relevant experience, but that experience is obviously time stamped, and it is 6+ years ago. But, I would argue that I've obviously been honing. I've not lost any of my skills. I just don't have direct, I increased the business by 10% last year, because I haven't been in that position. So that's where I'm at, and trying to work out how best to move forward.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really helpful. And I get we can't all have relevant current, and that's fine. But what I would still say is, and again, I know nobody wants to hear this because you're trying to finish your studies and you've already done work and you've got experience, right? But the employer who's hiring you wants to see that really working now. So can you do some psychology stuff, for a friend, for another business community? Can you run something online, small, low key, for a voluntary organisation? Can you offer yourself up to a local voluntary sector organisation that you're interested in and say, can I run some free Zoom? They'll bite your arm off, Hannah, let's be honest. Can I run some free Zoom workshops around X and get evidence at the beginning and the end, so that you have evidence?
Yeah.
If you haven't got evidence, it is all much harder. That's what I would say in this tough market. So don't panic, but know that 6-year-old experience is probably not going to sell it to an employer right now. Whereas if you can say, I've been doing this and this and this and that, and I've worked on this, and look at the results, and here's some of the feedback, brilliant. We know that this person can do that, because they're not trying to be horrible. They just want to know that you can rinse and repeat that experience for them, so that they can understand that they'll get their return on investment, if you like. They're not taking a massive punt, because right now the God's honest truth is they don't need to, because they'll get someone else who's got closer and tighter and more relevant experience right now. And as I say, I know I'm being very, very honest today, and I could absolutely sit here and say, yeah, no, it's totally fine. But I'm not going to do that, because I think it's really important to say this is the market right now, and to give you the best chance. Because what I don't want ever to happen is for folk to go away, get a qualification, spend all that time and money, then start applying and get really dejected, when actually probably starting now doing something would give you the evidence in 6 months' time.
Okay.
So I hope that's useful.
Yeah, I was going to add to that the we promote them in our newsletters, but Link Up London are a skilled volunteering organisation. Okay, it's London. I appreciate you're not now in London, but there may be other similar organisations where they take a skilled professional. You work on a project, you do it for a time banded period, whether that's 4 weeks or 2 weeks or 6 weeks. And it gives you very up-to-date experience, because you're working with a charity sector, so you're giving your time. But the organisation are very sympathetic to women who are coming back to the workplace after a break, because they know that they recognise you've got all those talents. They just want to help you build your confidence, and in return you're helping an organisation that can't afford you. So, and that's a great way to just put a piece of up-to-date work experience. And the other thing just to consider, if you're not quite ready yet to be applying for things, is to look at some speculative job descriptions anywhere. Doesn't matter where you just search for the territory, the discipline, the function that you're thinking you'd like to go into, if that's around talent, or as you say, L&D, and then just start looking at what the job descriptions ask for, because some of those skills that we all think might be a bit out of date, often it's the technology that's changed a bit, how things get done, and whether they use Slack or whether they, whatever. And that can be frightening when you see that on a job description. You think, God, I haven't done that. But actually there's time to, if you know what's likely in that role to be needed, whether it's being top notch at Excel, then you've got time to do those courses or that practice, and so that you can say you're proficient. Because basically they're going to take your word for it. You just need to know that you can do it. So it's just preparing so you're best served, because that's stuff that and this is more at the front end of getting the job. You're also talking about negotiating salary, but it all adds up, because if you've got the more of those things you have on that JD, that normally they're asking for a unicorn anyway, but unicorns aside, you've got the majority of it, it will put you in a stronger salary negotiation position, because you can evidence that you've got those things, and that is always going to be your best argument. But it does require prep for you. I mean, I think that's bluntly obvious to you. I'm sure you're thinking about it.
Yes, I've been doing lots of prepping.
Yeah, you just really have to do the work, unfortunately. But
fun with 2 small children and a last year of a degree, but
yeah, well, you'll look back and wonder how you did it, but the fact is you are doing it. So you just got to celebrate every day that you keep doing it.
Yeah, small wins. Yeah,
thank you.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, and I get it. It's really, but I don't. It's all this stuff to do. But if you do it now, you'll be in a much better position when you're applying, because otherwise you're going up against loads of folk who are in it right now, and that's what they'll pick because it's easier, and that's and that's how it is right now.
I've put myself forward for exactly this reason, and I am actually the lead on it's a volunteer student, it's basically led by students for students, building a face-to-face psychology community for students. And so I've started doing that, and they've appointed me as the lead, so that's obviously beneficial, because it kind of helps to be able to help to pioneer that. But I think it would be good to do some other voluntary work outside of it, just to complement it, just to fill it out a bit.
Yeah, so. And listen, I know it's horrible, you know, I totally, you know, could easily put a big blanket around me, Hannah, and just just relax till the, you know, just relax till the end of the year. But honestly, this bit of prep that you do, and I've sat there in my job trying to create a website for my business and generate, and it's just, you know, all of the things. And like Bemma says, you'll go back and go, how did I do that? But the more prep you can put in, the better position you'll be in. And what I hate seeing is someone who's like emerges blinking from the light of doing their studies and then goes da, and actually there's no one waiting for them to da too.
Yeah, I get it.
And it's harsh. So yeah, Lindsay's asked about pre-first interview chat to state what salary she was looking for within the range. It's not a question she's had before, and you'd be happy anywhere. Salary questions are always tricky. I think, Lindsay, you know, what would you really like, and what is really reasonable? Again, looking at the kind of benchmarking of where you're at and what you've done, and, you know, looking at other job descriptions of what you've already got. I'd probably give them high-ish so that there's a bit of room for negotiation, is my thoughts. Ben, any thoughts on that? Or I do hate a salary question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a sifting question. So it's there for, it's not there for your benefit, but it's sort of there for their benefit, to sift people too low because they're probably not got the skills that they actually need for that position, because they will have looked at a market rate for that position at any point. And you know, it's big or small companies do that. And then if you go too choppy at the top end, obviously they know they can't afford you. It is a punt. And I think it's straightforward as it is, you do have to go, do a bit of research for sure. You can definitely do comparisons if you know anyone. If it's through a recruiter, for example, they can give you benchmarking for that salary. So you can flip the question, not so much with the employer, but if you were with a recruiter, you could flip the question. You can also do some salary benchmarking that's mentioned before. Glassdoor's not bad, and so on and so forth. So you could have a good sense of where or if you know someone in that role or type of role, try and get a salary band. So you're not completely misjudging yourself. But ultimately, yes, you may get ruled out of the process, but it won't be because you're not being confident. It's because you just aren't a match. And in a way, that saves a lot of time and effort going into the interview process. If you're 20 grand, 30 grand, or just way off for that company, and you won't be happy if you pitch yourself too low and you end up then not in a strong negotiating position. So I think there has to be a degree of reflecting what you want, being and a degree of, you know, being informed by what the market says, and then you just have to take and state a band, you know, state between X and Y. That also gives you a wiggle room, so you're not just sort of naming a hard number, unless you really do have a hard number in place. But most of us know how much we need as our bare minimum, and then what we think we're worth on top. And I suppose that's what and also how much you want the role.
Yeah.
Will play a factor, of course, as well. But yes, it's a hard one. It is a hard one, and it is there not to serve us, it's to serve the employer, sadly.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there is that as well, like you say, how much do you want this specific role, this specific company? Is it a step slightly downside to move up? You know, is it, there's times to do that. I've seen some stats a long time ago that said that if women take a hit in the salary, it takes them about 7 years to get back up, which is a horror stat. You know, but sometimes it's the right thing to do. And also knowing that you get to decide what's right for your situation, which can and does change, and if it's going to make your life better and easier, that's okay. Just be aware that there are potentially kind of consequences to that, and it might take you longer to step back up. Sometimes the title's important as well. If you can't quite get the money, you know, I've sort of helped friends to get the head over the director title so that when they move, they're more likely to, you know, get that again, don't you? I'm actually helping my brother at the moment. He's going through the same position, and he's looking to get the next title so that when he does move, when this particular project is done, he'll be moving with his evidence and the head of title so that you can get it again. It's looking ahead, well knowing that there's no certainty, unfortunately, but what might you want to do next? Where might you want to go next?
And I just wanted to go back to a comment that Ruth made, just to finish that topic. The comment was around the issue might be that peers are actually attending in person, and therefore you may be disadvantaged. And I think the truism of all of this is that, as we know, if it's relating almost each decision as they come as to which is most important. Not to suggest that your family are not always the most important thing, but sort of
Oh, don't know about anybody else's
be present versus not being visible, and therefore being feeling that you may be impacted by that. And even if that is not true, that possibly you will feel that way, and therefore that could sort of not be the best position to put yourself in. So I think the hard part is there is no, this whole idea of work-life balance when you have a family is very difficult. It's not really a balance at all. Because that suggests it's a perfect thing. It's not. So you will have to make personal choices, I think, as to what's the most important to you at that given moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can and does shift. Sometimes it's okay to put our feet to the floor. Sometimes it's okay to step off and back a little bit. And both are fine, and both have consequences, as Benjamin said. Unfortunately, there's no perfect decision. I hate having to give an "it depends" answer. It feels a bit like a politician, but sometimes in this crazy, world of careers, that is where we're at.
Okay, so before we say our goodbyes, Laurie, is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up?
Yeah, just that it's well worth starting from a place of working out what you want and need, and knowing that whatever that is okay, and the right employer will go with that. The more specific and small you make it, obviously, the more niche your ask is, the more that will only appeal to a smaller set of the market. But that is also fine if that's who you want to work for and with, isn't it?
Excellent. Okay. Are we good? So I will send the session out so you can look at it again, or you can share it with anyone you think it may be useful for. I'll also include Laurie's details for anybody that would wish to speak with Laurie through her discovery call offer, which I'll just put a link into the email so that you can have a direct link to Laurie should you wish to have any further conversations about what she offers.